July 31st.
Having arrived, I'll officially call the meeting to order. Is the meeting been properly posted and the roll been taken?
Yes.
Thank you. Item number 2, our approval of the minutes. 2.1, our approval of the minutes from the January 6th, 2025 and the February 25th, 2025 joint meeting with the common council. There's no addition or corrections. I entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 6th and February 25th.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 3, communications. Communications at this point. Item number 4 is public hearing to review and possible recommendation Noel Vargas for N&G Auto Sales LLC. 4.1 is a public hearing on a conditional use petition to amend the group development to include in-vehicle sales or service and outdoor display land uses for automotive sales at 1830 Hobbs Drive, Unit H, tax parcel XSVP 00002E within the manufacturing light ML zoning district. Applicant again, Noel Vargas for N&G Auto Sales LLC. And at this time, I will open the public hearing and have staff start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so this is a conditional use for an in-vehicle sales and service at 1830 Hobbs Drive, Unit H. The applicant, Noel, is in the audience today, so we can hear from him. Basically, this one is, we've had things in the past near this property where the only issue that they really have is with parking. This applicant is looking to only have a maximum of 4 cars, and he would actually be doing his sales inside the building. But like I said, Noel is in the audience if you would like to have further questions with him.
Any questions for staff? Yeah.
How many stalls are his?
So with those units, they don't have specific stalls for each unit, but in the past there, we did count them up, and I believe that because we've had some other people that have done this in the past, and we've given them 4 or 5 stalls.
4 or 5 stalls.
Correct, and he's looking to have a maximum of 4 cars.
Thanks.
And you said no here? I don't know if no.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I don't know if you want to come to the podium and add anything that we don't already have in our packets, but you're welcome.
Everything's good, yeah.
Okay. Any questions for no? Not. Anyone from the public wish to speak at this time, either for or against this? I would just ask that you come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There's no other public comments, and I will close the public hearing and move on to item 4.2, which is again, consider a conditional use petition to amend the group development to include in-vehicle sales or service and outdoor display land uses for automotive sales at 1830 Hobbs Drive, Unit H, tax parcel XSBP 00002E within the manufacturing light ML zoning district. Again, applicant Noel Vargas for N&G Auto Sales LLC. Anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to recommend the common council approval of 1, conditional use findings listed in the report, and 2, limited conditional use request for in-vehicle sales for service and outdoor display land use for automotive sales at 1830 Hobbs Drive, Unit H, tax parcel XSBP 00002 02E in the manufacturing light ML zoning district to Noel Vargas for N&G Auto Sales LLC, subject to the findings and conditions of approval as listed in the report.
There's a motion and a second.
I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 5, public hearing to review a possible recommendation regarding Shodine Group LLC. 5.1 is a public hearing on a conditional use petition to amend the group development land use allowing for multiple principal buildings on a single parcel XCRE 00032A and within the Creekside condominium XCRE 25 through XCRE 32 within the residential mixed 8RM8 zoning district. Again, applicant Shodine Group LLC. And with that, I'll open up the public hearing and have staff start us off.
Mr. Mayor and commission members, this is a proposed amendment to a group development that was approved over 20 years ago, looking to do a sale to a different developer. And this would be a proposal to change from what was previously approved as 4-unit structures and shift them to 2-unit structures. The plans that you have in your packet, specifically, I think page 18 kind of shows it pretty well. The buildings are approximately the same locations, but they would be separated by 20 feet between the structures, maintaining their fire separation, but built as 2-unit structures versus 4-unit structures.
Any questions for staff?
This was 20 years ago, so is there anything that the previous developer was required to do that they have not completed?
I believe that's something that has been negotiated between the current condo association and the proposed developer, and that would have been finalizing the asphalt driveway of the shared, what would be a shared driveway between the 2 condo associations.
Thank you. And with the petition, like that, I would just ask. state your
Ryan?
name.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'll wait.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, David Patzelt, Shodine Group, 77 North First Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. And Commissioner, maybe more specific on that topic. As the developer, we have an agreement with the condo association that our condo association members are here this evening. If you'd like to hear from them, there's also a letter in your packet that we are working cooperatively with them. And yes, there are improvements that were not completed by the prior developer. And we are committed to completing those developments, and we will be posting a letter of credit with the city that those improvements be completed. And secondly to that, there are some improvements that were previously done that have deteriorated, and we will be reconditioning or reworking those improvements so that they are satisfactory for completion of the roadway surface. So hopefully that's clear. It makes it a little more clear for you.
Do you have a timeline in place for those completions?
We do, and those would be done as we commence construction of the first residential units. And it would be this coming spring, summer, if we can get through the various processes of replatting and the condo association docs being updated. There's some legal issues with the condo association being over 10 years old. And we're trying to get that all legally cleaned up between us, the condo association, before we can start any construction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petition? Kevin, did you have a question?
Yeah. So there was one element in the packet that was confusing to me, and I don't know whether you're the guy to answer it or the condo association. But at one point in the packet, I read the opinion of our city attorney that 100% of the condo owners had to approve certain changes. And then elsewhere it noted 2/3 or 3/4. So what process still has to take place with the condo association in addition to the letter from Jay Rasmussen about the support of the condos association for this plan.
Kevin, I apologize. I had a typographical error. It should have been 75% in both agenda items.
Okay, and has there been a vote of the association yet?
There has not yet been a vote. That vote is, will be taken after the city approves all of the various documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions? Anyone else, in attendance wish to speak either in favor or against this issue at this time? And if so, again, I would just ask that you state your name and address for the record and come up to the podium if you wish. Seeing and hearing none, then I would go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to item 5.2, which is consider a request for a conditional use petition to amend the group development land use allowing for multiple principal buildings on a single parcel at CRE 00032A and in the creek side condominium XCRE 25 to XCRE 32, all within the residential mix 8 RM8 zoning district applicant holding group LLC. You care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 6.1 is consider a request for a land redivision by condominium plat for the property known as the Creekside Condominiums applicant Showing Group LLC.
Mr. Mayor, in your packet is a proposed condominium plat that would be in line with the previously recommended group development. And this would be for 2-unit or townhouse type structures within the expansion area of the Creekside condominiums.
I got a question. In the previous document, wasn't there an opinion from our city attorney about approving the replatting until after the vote?
I do not recall. There is a recommendation that this be subject to the Board of Appeals regarding the setback issue between the two different phases of the condominium.
Says in replatting, it says the city attorney's opinion is that the approval of the owners of. City's opinion is that this approval step must occur before the city could take official action on the replatting request. Oh, never mind, I read it. We're fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Any other questions? There to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve it.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 6.2 is consider a 2-lot land division request by certified survey map CSM for 205 through 433 South Wright Street.
Mr. Mayor, what you have in front of you is a proposed land division which would create a separate out parcel immediately south of the O'Reilly's location on Wright Street. This is part of a planned infill development that the Plan Commission and Council have previously approved. And this aligns with that approval to create that one additional lot. Staff recommendation would be to make the approval contingent upon also having a financial guarantee to make sure that the curbing goes in for the entrance area and also removal of the light pole that's currently in the right of way.
Any questions? Sorry.
Silence, but not.
No worries. Anyone care to make a motion?
No, I have questions.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. That's all right. First, my first question is, are we aware of any activity, has this property been marketed? Is there a proposed use, that is, driving this, separation at this point?
None that we are aware of.
Okay. So my second question is, how come there wasn't a request to separate lot 3, which had also been approved?
What we have is what they submitted. This was
Okay.
the,
Okay. Um, so my next question is, if we look at, and this was a question that came up previously, when we were talking about the alignment of these lots. If we look at what's page 54 in our packet, which is the certified survey map of this area, by Ferris Hansen and Associate, for the first time, we see the actual easements. And if I look at lot 2, okay, and I'm reading this correctly, there's an easement along the frontage guaranteed to whoever's in O'Reilly's. There's an easement along its side and an easement just over halfway back on that lot. Okay. First, the easement in the middle is actually, so on what is the south side of proposed lot 2 is actually where we had identified the driveway for lot 2 and lot 3, correct?
that is correct.
Right. One problem with that front easement is that we agreed, and you even reference it in this document, that that lot 2 could be separated if we had adequate curving, so that the entry to lot 2 and the entry to lot 3 were at the back, right?
Correct.
And so the easement across the front of lot 2 would be blocked by a curb.
That would be correct. Yes.
Right. And the easement through the middle of lot 2 would also cross what we had proposed as the curb, but we had never really set that distance, so I'm not going to say that. But if this easement exists in the middle of lot 2, do we even know that we're separating a lot that has space for a buildable structure on it? If there's an easement right through the most likely place you'd put a structure? And by that, I'm looking at where the O'Reilly's was located. I don't know. And the last time that we asked these questions, the applicant's attorney said, you know, we know there's an easement along along Hobbs. We think there's an easement so they can enter the back. They didn't represent to us that there were easements straight through the lot they were proposing to create. And so I think that's a problem. And then as it pertains to lot 3, even though it's not in front of us tonight, right? Next to the easement, access reserve parking for Walgreens per Walworth County document number 76012, there's a gray it's not serpentine, but angled easement or barrier there, but there's also a Walgreens parking easement in what may well be part of lot 3.
It is within, it would fall within the proposed lot 3, yes.
So, without the applicant or his attorney, or their attorney, I should say, before us, telling us how they're going to address the elimination of these easements, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable moving forward with the separation. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Do you have anything else?
I guess the only response would be is both lots 1 and 2 of this proposal are owned by the petitioner. They are the holder of those easements that are referenced on the document. They could amend those. That is between them and their ownership and the leasee at this point of the original lot 1, which is O'Reilly's.
And Walgreens, right?
And Walgreens, that is correct.
It would seem to me if we were discussing previously the order of doing things right, I would like to know that those easements were addressed before I dealt with the separation.
You don't have the petitioner here.
Everything has come from New York State.
And no one's online.
If you wanted to move it forward, you could make it as a condition that those easements issues be resolved prior to being placed on a city council agenda.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin, I think a little more needs to be cleared up, whether it moves forward tonight under those conditions. As long as it gets cleared up, I mean, it does seem confusing.
Generally speaking, we're pretty good at giving leeway to businesses that look out for the best interests in the community. This particular case has been challenging over the years, so I agree with Kevin, we need more clarification before we move forward.
And if I could add one thing, Ryan,
Yeah.
I mean, part of the reason I'm not comfortable moving forward is because I don't believe our potential approval should be granted in a fashion that may provide pressure to some other party, not the applicant. In this case, their existing lot 1 entity, the lot 1 entity who depended upon the contractual commitments around these easements, and Walgreens, who has a right related to the other easement. So I don't think we should step into the middle of their negotiations. So I wouldn't be in favor of making our approval contingent. I'd be in favor of telling them that this application is out of sequence without them clarifying with firm evidence that O'Reilly's and Walgreens have abandoned their easements in favor of the applicant having a clear lot 2. And frankly, I mean, this is different than dealing with a utility overhead easement or something like that. This is a right of that business owner to be guaranteed through way from that entry to their building. So, it almost seems like we would be making a stand in favor of the applicant before they had negotiated the abandonment of the easement by the other party.
Thanks. Anyone? Motion. think that's the appropriate thing to do.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table this until we receive more information from the applicant regarding the easements and how they are communicating with their current tenants. Second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, Kevin. You might be muted, Kevin.
Just tried to unmute Will instead of myself. But if we make that, if that motion carries, Mark, what's your interpretation of what happens next?
It's back in the petitioner's lap.
And this will not appear on a council agenda until we get an answer from the applicant.
It would need to have planning commission recommendation to move forward to council, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 6.3 is consider request from Alliant Energy for an easement to route underground power cable to a portion of the city-owned parking lots between 2nd Street and 3rd Street. Mark?
Including your packet is some communication from Alliant. They are looking to take a bunch of the power lines that are currently located just to the east of this building and up to the alley and place those underground. Some upgrade to some of the service to the old Hallmark store over on 3rd Street. And because this affects 2 different city properties, that would require plan commission and council approval to move forward with easements with the power company.
Any questions for Mark?
Are these easements restricted to underground only? Or do they have a vertical channel?
There's still gonna be overhead lines there because the existing poles will still hold the telephone and cable TV lines. The poles will not be going away, or at least all of the poles will not be going away.
Okay. And then they would be responsible for replacing anything that needed to be resurfaced or anything else to the existing standard.
Standard easement language is yes, they have to restore it to pre-existing condition.
Any other questions for Mark? Anyone care to make a motion?
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, well,
Who actually has ownership of these poles?
Poles, the power poles are owned by Alliant, and then they sublet to both the cable TV and also to the telephone company.
So if Alliant owns the poles and Alliant no longer uses the poles or cares about poles,
They typically take the top off the pole, and the bottom section that still has the other utilities will stay there until those utilities hopefully locate underground someday.
but who's responsible for the pole? Yeah,
Good question. I wish I knew that in several areas around the city.
Follow-up question.
yes,
Mark, during the original process, was the initial easement granted for any use that they have or for specific use pertaining to power? Meaning, can they continue to just keep the power lines up there and then charge to whoever's using it? The poles, once they now no longer use it for power reasons? Why did we give them
We
the
don't,
easement?
those power poles would have been in there since the city went electric, even before I worked here, so.
that's a long time.
There is no easements that I'm aware of for any of the poles in the downtown area. In the central area of town, they're just there. Those predate. I mean, none of our plats before 1940 show easements anywhere.
Yes.
I will bring up a good point. We don't have any streetlights out there under the poles, do we? Are there all our streetlights?
There are streetlights on some of these poles, yes.
So we,
The pole, the pole will stay at least at that tall, so.
oh, so we're gonna, oh, so we're gonna run electricity up there from the underground.
Alliant will be providing electricity just like they currently do. We lease those.
Yes, I know.
They're removing the top of the pole with the three phase. The three phase is going underground.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mark? Anyone care to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to recommend council approval for the request for Alliant Energy to route underground power cable through the eastern portion of public parking lot at 105 South Second Street and the eastern portion of the municipal building parking lot at 123 South Second Street as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second that.
There's a motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Item number 7, public hearing for review and possible recommendation, Harbor Club at Lake Lawn LLC. 7.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider planned infill development amendment to the official zoning map for a revised step 3 general development plan at 2400 East Geneva Street, located in the manufacturing light and L zoning district to allow for a residential development in the area of the Lake Lawn Resort Golf Course near North Shore Drive. Applicant Harbor Club at Lake Lawn LLC. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing. And where's Jackie, get it started.
All right, good evening. We just spoke about this property last week, as there was a joint meeting of the Plan Commission and Council to consider and approve a comprehensive plan amendment to allow residential in this location. And so this is the applicant's request for a GDP for the single family portion of that project. Includes 37 single family homes on the lakefront portion just south of what is now the Lakeline Golf Course. As was noted in past meetings and in the packet, that would affect the design of the golf course. Proposed density for the single family area is 2.28 dwelling units per acre, which is lower than what would be allowed in the comparable SR5 single family zoning district. Proposed landscape surface area is just over 64%. As you can see in the drawing, this project will take access from North Shore Drive. That North Shore Drive and Highway 50 have both been upgraded recently and should be able to easily accommodate the 37 additional homes. As you can see in the neighborhood design, it's 2 long dead-end streets that end in a cul-de-sac. This is done because the applicant's seeking to reserve golf course to the north, and also there's resort and environmental corridor to the east. And so typically we prefer to see streets be contiguous, so through streets rather than dead-end streets. In this case, the applicant is requesting this as a point of zoning flexibility to allow for these longer dead-end streets that are better suited for the site. So that's been noted as a point of flexibility. But staff would like to see an emergency access so that if for some reason there's some sort of emergency or fire or water main break on North Shore Drive and folks can't get out to North Shore Drive, we want to see an option for people to get in and out of that neighborhood another way. And so we've suggested a secondary emergency access as a condition of approval. So ideally, that would extend from the eastern edge of the neighborhood and connect into the paved road network already existing at Lake Lawn. This is consistent with what we did in earlier phases of the Harbor Club development. Some of those longer dead-end cul-de-sacs also have emergency access egress points, so that again, if something were to come up, people would have another way out and emergency services would have a way in. So this is included in one of our conditions of approval. These lot sizes are a bit bigger than we've seen in previous phases of the Harbor Club. There's optional 3-car garage models that they're offering as part of this development. We are requesting that driveways be at least 30 feet deep to accommodate at least 2 cars parked in each driveway. If you've got a 3-car garage unit, then you should have 3 cars in your driveway and then 2 in your 3 cars in your garage and 2 in your driveway. If you have a 2-car garage, you'll have, of course, 2 in your garage and 2 in your driveway. But in addition, staff is recommending that private street that all of these houses are located on be widened to allow for parking on one side of the private street. Right now, there's not a lot of opportunity for guest parking. We know those 2-car and 3-car garages get filled up by residents and their fun lake toys and things like that. And we really want to make sure that, you know, if someone has a party, a gathering, Packer game, there's places for residents and their guests to park without blocking the private street, which is fire access. So we've added that as a condition of approval to ensure that driveways are deep enough to accommodate parking and to widen the private street to allow for parking on one side of the street. Landscaping scheme will be similar to that proposed in previous phases of Harbor Club, relying on a lot of prairie plantings and a little bit of lawn that'll be maintained by the HOA. As for pedestrian connections, we don't have sidewalk in this neighborhood, but the city's comprehensive plan does recommend pedestrian connections along North Shore Drive. I would recommend that those be considered because people in this neighborhood will have limited places to walk on pedestrian only facilities. And if they're interested in walking up to Highway 50 for any of the shopping or restaurants, providing sidewalk on North Shore Drive would give them a safe way to do so. And also potentially give people connection to the south and to points beyond this site and just support pedestrian connectivity throughout the city. Additionally, you'll see in the GDP site plan, there's a proposed pedestrian connection at the east end of one of the cul-de-sacs that would be intended to connect to the pedestrian network within the Lake Lawn Resort. So folks who live there could also take a walk throughout the resort, can be in a convenient manner. We would want to see that planned in alignment with this emergency access that I mentioned earlier. Applicant has requested that the approval period for the project be 10 years instead of our standard 5. Staff has no concerns about that. We've seen that sometimes these runways take a little bit longer, and it's rather than making the applicant come back in, giving them 10 years is worth considering. Next item on the list is the North Shore Drive setback. So in our code, there's a 100-foot setback required from the center line at North Shore Drive. Because that road jogs a bit, the center line moves as well. And so one of the proposed homes does not meet that 100-foot setback. And so the applicant is requesting that as an item of zoning flexibility, that one house does not meet the proposed or the required 100-foot setback. And the applicant also proposes a significant amount of regrading on the site. So if you look at the grading plan, you can see that a lot of dirt needs to be moved around to create flat development sites, proper drainage, etc. And as a result, there's a lot of dirt being placed in the environmental corridor. Generally, we wish to avoid that if we can. Staff would prefer to see less or no fill within the environmental corridor. But the zoning code does allow for us to consider that when it's necessary. So staff has included a recommendation or a condition of approval to not allow that fill within the corridor. However, if we do not allow that fill within the environmental corridor, the applicant will have to redesign that neighborhood and move everything up north away from the lakefront in order to stay out of that environmental corridor area. So if the plan commission, that this is something we're looking for your input on specifically about whether what your thoughts are on allowing fill in the environmental corridor. If you do wish to allow that fill, you would just need to remove condition number 2 in the staff report, which would enable the development to be approved more or less as proposed. And the applicant also requested a waiver of stormwater regulations. The Public Works Committee has denied this request and required that this project does meet the city's stormwater regulations. As was mentioned at the public hearing last week, the future plans for the area just north of this single family area would be for a multifamily project. That's not coming before you today. That's a future phase that would require a new GDP and will come before this body at that time. Regarding water quality, we spoke about this at the public hearing last week. Currently, there are no stormwater management facilities in this portion of the resort. And so all the new development will be required to meet the city's stormwater management requirements. And so the expectation is that we would see at least a modest improvement to water quality and stormwater management on the site. So what I'll do next is I'll run us through the proposed flexibilities briefly and the proposed staff conditions of approval. And perhaps after we've heard from the public, we can revisit those lists of the list of conditions of approval and just confirm we are comfortable with what is included in that list. So first, I'll start us off with the proposed flexibilities. Just to clarify, the only land uses being permitted at this time is the single family proposed in the GDP site plan. Another point of flexibility would be the public street frontage. So because all of these lots are on private street, they do not meet our usual requirement for each lot needing to have frontage on a public street. And so they need flexibility for that. This is similar to the approach that was taken in previous phases of the Harbor Club 1 through 3. They're also requesting flexibility for the length of the dead end streets. Typically, our code requires dead end streets to be avoided, and then if they are approved, they should be no longer than 500 feet. These cul-de-sac dead end streets are approximately 520 and 800 feet, so that's a bit longer than we would normally approve. So they're requesting flexibility. They're also requesting flexibility for the lot sizes. Just as a reminder, this is being done in the same way that previous phases of the Harbor Club development were approved, where there's a smaller lot area and then a buildable building pad area that's very close to the same size, rather than having larger lots with deep front yards and backyards. This is because the HOA takes care of that shared space between the homes. And so you'll see here, I've got minimum lot width at 59 feet versus 66, which would be required in the single family 5 zoning district. These lot width may need to be adjusted, as previously I was mentioning that staff would like to see that private street widen to allow for on-street parking. And so that may affect those sizes of the lots. And so at this time, that precise number has not been determined, but it'll be something similar and likely smaller than what would be normally permitted in the RS5 zoning district. Right. Additionally, I noted earlier that the 100-foot setback from North Shore Drive flexibility will be needed for that one parcel that does not meet that setback. And then you'll see in the staff report, we've got requested flexibilities for minimum setbacks. So those are reduced to 0 feet in the front yard and then 1 feet in the side and rear yard, again, because that lot and the lot that you see in the drawing and then the building pad are very similar in size. And so we're not requiring typical setbacks for those. Likewise, we have setback flexibility for the boundaries of the lot for phase 4. Those have been reduced to 1 foot for side yards and 1 foot for rear, just to provide more flexibility for the design of the neighborhood The neighborhood, as you see it, does not really get that close to those lot lines, but those are there just to provide flexibility. Number 7 on the list of flexibilities is minimum landscape surface. So as a whole, the neighborhood meets our minimum landscape surface requirements, but this is more of a technicality because the lot and the building pad are kind of one and the same for each individual lot. We're having closer to 100% coverage just because there is no front yard and backyard and side yard for each one of these lots. And so we just wanted to acknowledge that that's intentional, and we are noting that as an item of flexibility. And then finally, in the next phase, the required landscape points may be reduced, consistent with previous phases of the Harbor Club, since they're doing the shared landscaping scheme with the prairie plantings. So with that, I think I'll pause. And then I'll just request that we return before the Plan Commission takes action. I'd request that we return to that list of conditions of approval just to ensure that Commission's comfortable with everything on the list or any other changes that may need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any initial questions for Jackie right now? Or perhaps the petitioner wants to speak next. Address anything.
Good evening, Dave Sakara, CEO, Lake Lawn Resort. So as Jackie identified, a couple of things that we're seeking for this evening, mostly on the GDP for this phase 4. This is the 3rd meeting that we've had, one each of the last months. And last week in particular, I went through a more lengthy presentation of talking about different things with the golf course and other things that are positively impacted by the change that the developer is presenting here. So if there was any questions about that later, since we just had that recent presentation, I'd be happy to answer those. Rick will be up here, Rick Zirk with the development, to go through some of those things. But I do want to add some of the conditions that Jackie mentioned in the report, or other conditions that would be impacting parcels outside of the phase 4 parcel. Want to make sure that we have a discussion about those because it could impact some of the other operations that we have planned for the golf course or some of the other land connections. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Zirk. Glad to see everybody. It's been a while, about 7-8 days, I think, since I saw you last. With me here today is obviously Dave Sakaris and Brian Pollard from Fairwind. I have a couple slides here. If I get into too much detail, it's all pretty new to some people, but you folks have been through a lot. So if there's anything you don't want to hear, just push me along a little bit. On the first slide we have is the location within the resort. Again, the orange spot is where the residential is proposed. That includes both the townhome and the single family home area. The next slide, Angie and I are working this through our rehearsal and our dress rehearsal and the presentation all at once. That 16.3 acres is the portion which is single family. That's sort of triangular piece to the top. That is the townhome area. As noted here, the 75 feet along the shore remains part of the resort. That's not part of a property within the HOA's ownership. The next slide, quickly, I'll jump through these. The next slide kind of depicts in color what the subdivision will look like. Again, it's 37 single family lots. And as Jackie said, these lots are a little wider than in phase 2 because we found a need we believe there will be some folks who want 3-car garages. So these lots are about 10 feet wider to allow for a 3rd-car garage. One thing I noticed in the report, I think Jackie touched on it too, is when they scaled the lot sizes at staff level, I think they're using a scale that was a little tighter than our lot exhibit, which I think is the next one. Maybe that'll be easier for folks to see. The lot sizes are on there is 55 plus a foot, say 56 foot wide by 94 deep, 90 foot building pad. This will be important in a minute when we get back to the road thing that we talked about earlier. Those may adjust simply because the road gets wider. But this does show a 30-foot minimum driveway to the front of the lot, 31 to, we usually set the house back a foot from the lot. The reason we provide the foot around a lot is, we try to hit the bullseye every time, but if something was off a couple inches and the pad was exactly the right size, we wouldn't want to have to deal with a foundation being 2 inches over the property line or something. So we give ourselves about 6 inches on each side of the house to the little margin of error in case the foundation's off an inch or two, and we're not coloring outside the lines. So again, the 55 by 94 comes up to a different number than you have for the lot size in the report, I believe. And if we do talk about some of those reducing it for the fronts, our homes will easily fit within the 94 feet. So if you take some frontage off, some depth off of that to widen the road, it's not going to hurt the building process. And we still have room to not push the lots back. The next slide is our landscape plan. I know Jackie talked about this. It does show we do provide trees. There was a question on trees. We do provide a tree on the front on every lot. But the rain garden is located along the entire length of the shore to provide a catch-all or a means of catching the runoff from the site so that it's treated through the rain gardens and discharged to the lake rather than going directly into the lake. And we do provide one tree for every lot. But there's a lot of thought that goes into that to make sure the views of the lake aren't obstructed we're not putting a tree between two houses and blocks the view of the lake from the person who lives across the street. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we don't block views with the trees. And as we talked last time, soil tests have been done, archaeological work's going to be completed as the process goes. We've done the upfront stuff, the rest of it will be done. The environmental corridor has been reviewed. I'll say it again, as we said last time, this plan does not include the addition of any additional boat slips. This plan does not include dredging the lake or doing anything to the lake itself or any other lake modification. I've seen that floated around a few times. We're not doing that. The next phase is the utility plan and
Really quick on that last slide. On the bottom left there, those two houses that are on the cul-de-sac,
correct.
why is there such a difference between the outline and the dark, the grayscale?
No idea.
Is that two different options you're looking at?
No, I'm not sure why that did that. The dark, it just looks like in the landscape plan it slid. That should be the lot should be around the pad.
Okay.
It should, there's no option for a different layout. That's just bad drafting, I think is what that is.
So the grayscale is where you want
Yeah,
the.
the houses will stay exactly where they're at.
I do have a couple questions regarding that as well. The grading on there is made to make it for a flat surface to put the house up. But the front houses seem to be very close to the back houses and you're cutting significantly into the hill behind it. That's going to create a downward slope towards the hill behind it to those houses directly.
Correct.
So are you factoring in all that water runoff?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And then the only pathways that I see are the road. Is everyone expected to walk along the road as well?
That's kind of what's happened in phase 1 and 2. We haven't had any issue with that phase. It's a private road, not a public road. So everybody's used the road for their pathway. And then you'll see in the other one, we get to the pathway, there is a path from that to the east.
The pathway that's connecting to the rest of Lake Lawn, is that going to be wide enough to accommodate golf carts?
It's gonna be actually wider now. It was originally gonna be wide enough for golf carts was we originally planned. The staff has asked that be widened and a stronger basin to provide emergency access for vehicles. So it's just part of the challenge we have. We want to widen up for golf carts, but we don't want people cutting through. That's the challenge we have with this. So we'll be working with the resort to make sure emergency vehicles and cars can get through there in an emergency, but we don't create a situation where we're having people drive through because it's more convenient and, having people entering, if you will, the golf course area with cars, because it's more convenient for them. That's a little bit of the challenge we're working our way through right now.
With the retention area and the rain garden, are there gonna be walkways or anything else along those lines for people to go down to it, cross that?
We've been trying not to send people to the lake in that direction. The lake will be, available to people that back up to it, but the goal is to push all the lake use. The beach and everything will still be at the existing location in phase 3. Most of the fishing, the marina, the boating will all be there. It's not the intent to, our goal here has been at the 75 foot to create a natural environmental corridor, whatever you make that wildlife, return it to wildlife and not have it where people are accessing it.
Okay.
So, sort of like the center of the other subdivision, we have, tall grasses, things like that, that will hopefully keep people, from accessing those portions. Want me to move on with the rest?
That's what I have for
Okay.
that slide.
I just want to make sure I don't jump over something. The next slide is the utilities. I put this under just so folks can see what's going on. Right now, that sort of purplish line is an existing water main through the site. You see towards the exit, the entrance, we're connecting into that, abandoning the line. We'll rerun that through our streets. Then go up through the end of the north cul-de-sac and then connect back in, so that centerpiece will be gone. The green line right now, is a storm drain that apparently goes from around North Shore Drive straight through and into the lake. That's being intercepted, just west there, if you northwest of the houses. And that piece going to the lake will be disconnected. It'll be rerouted in the other colored line, and then it'll be taken into our rain garden. So instead of going directly into the lake, it will go into the rain garden system. And the staff has asked that we provide, in lieu of the pre-crust release, they've asked that we provide detention. Our engineers are confident that's not an issue. We can still provide the required detention if that's the route the city wants. So our engineers will work with your engineers to handle stormwater management the way they prefer it. The next slide is the access. We did run models for heavy or large equipment, fire truck analysis, basically to show that that's just an example. All the sheets are in your packet that show fire trucks can get around the cul-de-sacs and through this subdivision without difficulty. The next slide was that path interconnection we've been talking about. I kind of highlighted in there in green. The path is what is shown on the PIP. That area, no matter how you get to the other course, it winds up going through P's environmental corridor. But even in your ordinance, pathways are allowed into the environmental corridor. And that is what has been requested to be made a little wider so that vehicles can access it, in addition to golf carts. But again, we want to remain sensitive to the golf course and do this in a way that vehicles can get back and forth, and emergency vehicles can get back and forth, but not in a way that encourages cut through. That's been a bit of a challenge. Phase 2 in our subdivision, we had one that putting a gate up to make that so the folks couldn't just cut through with boat trailers and everything else because it was easier. We have talked about the grading in the PEC. We have, obviously, before we even came to you, we did our due diligence and we had worked with Sewer Pack on the grading. And what I want to be clear on is some people perceive that what we're doing is taking out environmental corridor features and replacing them. I thought we had a conversation, and I think what we were trying to say is, in your ordinance says, in addition to new developments, natural features should be preserved through the integration of these features into the design rather than being removed or degraded. If you're out there now, this is just turf grass golf course right to the water. We're not removing or degrading any environmental features. You know, there's not things that we're running over or tearing out or redoing. They're not there. So we believe, and our intention has been to integrate that environmental corridor into our plan, which is why we created a 75-foot corridor and a replanting with natural plants, rain gardens. And from our conversation with Sewer Pack, they've seen this as a benefit. We're removing golf course and with no natural features and installing natural features and a true environmental corridor. So we see that as an enhancement, not a degradation. I wanted to talk about the next slide, the North Shore setback. This was the example our engineer provided for us. He believed everything is outside the 100-foot setback. I guess it comes down to how you measure it to some degree, but from our perspective, we're outside. If there's a different way of measuring that and it puts that one lot partially inside, we're just asking for relief. And in fact, that's the way it's, if there's a different way of measuring than our engineers measured. So we're not looking to debate it. We thought we were outside, but if we're inside, we're just looking for a little bit of relief on that one item. The next thing, probably the most important are the four items that we talked about. Grading within the PAC, we don't believe that violates your ordinance, and we don't believe that it's degrading the environmental corridor in any way. We think we're enhancing it. The north drive setbacks, if we're outside of somebody's measurement mechanism or methodology, was looking for relief on that. The sidewalk, we understand the request for the sidewalk. We have a small portion of that in the single family. When the townhomes develop, they'll do the rest, and then the resort, when they redo their plan, can do the rest. But I think we're willing to participate and do our part. We just want to make sure that that's really desired. I know the golf course has strong feelings about a sidewalk on their side of the road up against their golf course. But from our perspective, we're committed to doing the piece with the single family area. With the townhomes developed, we do that. If that's not something that wants to be done, we won't. But if in the meantime, we've committed to doing it, but ultimately we just don't want to create a path to nowhere that starts nowhere and ends nowhere. If it's not going to go ultimately through the golf course, I don't know the purpose of it on just two small sections. But from our perspective, that staff has asked us to commit to doing that, and on our part, we're willing to do that. If that's ultimately wants to be done. The other thing that winds up it's number 13 on the list. It's wound up in a couple of our reviews. I think it's just a carryover. I understand in phase 1, it was in there. It's something that I think that was done at the resort for commercial property that says the village, the city reserves the right to inspect the buildings annually, and the fire department has the right to come into buildings 2 times a year for fire inspections. I believe that was really for the commercial buildings on the resort. And in phase 1, I think it applied to our clubhouse. But I don't know that it applies to single. I think staff would agree it doesn't really apply to single family homes, and it's not something we've done in phase 3 or the other phases. So I think it's a holdover. We just hate to see that left in there where the fire department comes through homes twice a year and inspect homes, and the city come through every year looking for violations. So sorry. And then the other miscellaneous things I think Jackie touched on were the 10-year GDP, the 500-foot cul-de-sac length, the second access. Again, if we're allowing that to be on top of the path, we don't have a problem trying to come up with something that works for the city and gets that taken care of. Now, the one thing, if we could, Andy, you could read back up to that one that showed the typical lot. I just want to make sure everybody's clear and nobody's surprised. Perfect, thank you. The road, it's a function of width. The road is identified there 31 feet to the front of the pad, and then we have the 94-foot building pad. If the road were to widen, and I'm gonna use easy math because that's what I understand. Say the road were to widen 6 feet, that would create 3 feet on each side of additional road pavement, which would reduce the driveway from 31 to 28. We're not looking to reduce the driveway from 31 to 28. So what we look to do then is take the 94-foot building pad, shrink it to 91 by moving the front lot line back. That's what Jackie was mentioning before. The lots may change in some size. So depending upon what the engineers agree for the additional street width is, that lot depth may change. We don't want to, don't want to back it up any closer. So we certainly have enough room in that 94-foot pad for our product in house line. So we may shrink that down a little bit just to make sure we get the added street width and we maintain a 30-foot driveway. It's just function math. We can't take from one area without giving back somewhere else. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I explained it well enough for me to even understand, and I understood when I started. Okay, yeah, good. I have a pointer we could do that, so I can save it here. Look, I don't know if it'll work. No, it doesn't. I'll have to walk over there. See, basically what Jackie's saying is this area here is going to get wider for the pavement width. When that gets wider, it's going to impact the driveway, but we've committed to maintain the 30-foot driveway. So if we take from the new street, go 30 foot back, we're gonna be into this building pad. This 94-foot dimension can shrink to 2, 3, 4, 5 feet, whatever it is, for the new street width. And we'll still have room within the building pad to build the homes. And one thing to maybe retouch on is the goal of this project is to make all the area outside the homes maintained by the HOA. That way it's uniform, it's clean, everything's mowed the same way. And by reducing the building pad a little bit, still is room for the house and still keeps everything nice and clean within the box. But that flexibility or that ultimately depth will have to be determined once the engineers determine how much they want to widen the streets. It's, I don't know, it's a 6 foot total or 3 foot total, whatever it is. I don't know. I care what the number is, but I need to know what the number is to make the plat ultimately work. We'll get what we're looking for is some type of concurrence with the requests we've had, and just requesting your recommendation to push GDP off to the next step of the process. And that's really all I had, unless there's any specific questions, or we're on to the public hearing and then take questions and be available to answer anything you have.
Any questions right now, or we'll continue the public hearing? And then, as was pointed out, we'll come back to the conditions, but at this time, do we have any paper slips of anyone wishing to speak? Okay. Despite the fact that we don't have any official slips, I will still, as I did with the previous public hearings, invite anyone that would wish to speak either in favor or against at this time. Just come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. If anyone that wishes to speak.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Andler. I live at 2032 Deer Run Drive. We moved here from Oak Park, Illinois 3 years ago. I love the openness. I love going North Shore Drive to my home and seeing the lake right there. I am concerned that a couple of things. All those homes are going to take away from the beautiful openness of the lake. Environmentally, I don't understand how taking away land and putting in a bunch of homes is going to be real friendly to the lake or to the area. Another big question that I've not heard is, how's that going to impact the neighborhood up there? A lot of people do take that road because there are a lot of homes up North Shore Drive. And I haven't heard any comments on how, with the building, if it happens, how that's going to affect our drive. And also how it's going to affect the land around it too, and the lake. I'm very concerned about the lake. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's John Folcom. I also live at 2032 Deer Run, Delavan, Wisconsin. And a couple questions that crossed my mind having grown up here for the last 75 years in the summertime. My grandmother had a house on Lake Geneva that was 110 years old. Okay, and so again, I'm interested in the impact environmentally, and I don't know whether in all these studies that everybody's coming up here and talking about, whether the DNR or the Army Corps of Engineers, which dredged this lake in the 80s, am I correct? How all of this building is going to impact, again, Lake Delavan, which is what, half the size or a third the size of Lake Geneva. And of course, all these lakes are being affected right now with all this development that's going on around here. I am now part of the Delavan Yacht Club, okay? And they go up and down North Lake Shore Drive, and they host regattas on this lake. And sailing is very important to Walworth County, which is very well known. How is this construction? Are you going to be bringing in, vehicles to build these 37 houses? Are you going to have a different access, coming off of 50? Or are they going to be just coming down North Lake Shore Drive? So these are things again that impact, and I don't know whether, you know, the Lake Lawn Lodge, you know, again, has, you know, done any of these studies, and it's part of the watershed, but because it's Lake Lawn Lodge and it's private and it's privately owned right now, whether you don't have to, you know, consult the DNR or the Army Corps of Engineers. I appreciate that you're letting, you know, the residents talk about, you know, how this is gonna impact things down the road. You see what's going on in your other, you know, development that's over there by the Shell gas station. You see what Shodine's doing up there, which they've got a sign about, you know, access, shore, whatever, you know, so you got the harbor there. You're not gonna build any more piers down there, you know, where it's very shallow, you know, coming up and underneath there. But I hope, again, you're taking into consideration, you know, how this is going to impact all this building that's going on around here is gonna impact Delavan Lake, and what you've got here, okay? That's a gem, all right? You know, if it's all about money, you know, I guess shame on, you know, everybody if it's all about money, all right? Because again, I came off of Lake Geneva and now people can't afford to live on Lake Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else care to make any public comments at this time? Yeah, Dave.
I just want to add that very appreciative of the comments from the two individuals that just spoke. And as I mentioned earlier, we had very extensive discussions on everything that we're doing on preserving the lake, how we want to make the lake better. I mean, Lake Lawn is there because of the lake. And so if anyone wanted to watch the recording from last week, there's a lot of information. I think it went 2 hours of information pertaining specifically to this development, the impact on the lake, the positivity around it. And even the minutes that was approved earlier in today's meeting has a lot of good information in there that seemed to be accurate as well.
Question for Dave. During the previous phases for the Harborfront development, did you do before, during, and after studies of lake impact and environmental?
A combination of myself and the developer, yes.
What were the results?
Would you like to speak specifically to the results of the impact?
I don't think we had exact results.
We did have specific during heavy rain times. We did have drones that went up and were able to see exactly how the runoff was and what the retention areas and the retention basins were doing to filter the water towards the lakefront.
Yeah, actually, the mayor and I met with the Delavan Lake Commission, was it?
Yeah.
And this was mid to end of summer. If you remember what happened last summer, I mean, from June and July, we had torrential downpours in that time. And we had a meeting at Lake Lawn and they sent up drones after every major storm and were actually complimentary to the way our storm system was working. When the meeting was called, to be honest with you, I was ready for them to say something to me like, hey, what are you guys doing? And I thought we were doing everything right. And it was nice of them to reassure that, yeah, we've set up drones. You know, we're getting complaints that there's problems and we tell them, hey, that development is not your problem. And the mayor was there and he heard it. So this is not just me talking here. And, you know, so what we've done now is we're containing that before it gets released to the lake. We're going to be doing the same thing here in phase 4 is we'll catch it, retain it, let it settle in before it gets released to the lake. So I will tell you, the hoops we have to jump through nowadays is 10 times more than 10 years ago, 10 times more than 20 years ago, and about 100 times more than any other developments have been built on this lake. So, you know, we actually have to go through more. Whether it's a private, public, whatever, we have to meet all the DNR standards, sewer pack standards. We have to live up to all those standards. And they're way harder now than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Sometimes the reason why I ask a question is because I already know the answer. And in this case, I wanted to highlight the difference between contractors who are actually taking the community and their project and the lake seriously. And that's one of the factors that we need to make sure that everyone in the community understands. We do take environmental impact seriously. We do take the lake and its health seriously, not only in this community, but also in the town. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Really.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We keep getting questions about traffic. Was that addressed last meeting? I can't remember if that's specific. No, so.
I mean,
Well, we want to address the traffic on North Shore with that, what we did, 15 years ago or whatnot.
your staff can maybe speak to that. I know you mentioned it, I think, in this meeting.
Seems to be a question that we see a few times here.
Could you restate the question?
Well, that was redone to accommodate traffic, if I'm understanding. I just want the details on that.
Correct, and I believe the traffic impact analysis was included at the tail end of the packet as the agenda item. Back 2003, maybe. Yeah, North Shore Drive was widened. That was all part of the original or earlier version for Lake Lawn, along with the development on the west side of North Shore Drive. As future development happens out there, there are some lane adjustments that have to be made and some additional turn lanes. Those would all be included eventually as other development happens out there. But the North Shore as a 4-lane can certainly handle this amount of improvements.
I think, yeah.
That, I knew the answer.
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to make sure everybody else heard it.
I won't break up my file on all the news articles, but I was gonna say the same thing that Dave had said, that if you weren't able to join us, less than a week ago, it was a very informative meeting, and, I think, yeah, to answer the question specific about traffic, is that one of the proposals, not these owners, not this development, but 20 years plus ago, for those of us that have lived here for a while and been involved, it's been often referred to as the road that led to nowhere, because it was built up and expanded to accommodate a different development that had been approved that never materialized. So I feel comfortable, appreciate the concerns about the traffic, but I feel very comfortable that actually we're gonna use that road more for what it was intended for, to address it. And as our staff pointed out, as development continues, further west of that along the same, then there needs to be adjustments, but it was expanded. It was thought that we would have seen an increase in traffic a long time ago from a potential development in this area, and it just never materialized, so.
I do have one more question regarding the construction process. When you build out these houses, are you building from the inside out towards the road? And it has to do with grading, it has to do with storage of construction vehicles, it has to do with all of that. So, or is it gonna be built to preference based on the individual that wants to buy the house in a particular location?
Sort of. What we do typically at the beginning of the projects, once we have all of our SWIP and everything set up, we do all the mass grading pretty much at once. All the lots and pads are built, all the roads are built. So then all the pads are there. We generally pick a couple things that happen. We find a spot to stockpile the black dirt that we return to the lots once the home's built. So the area is defined. If it's outside the lots, it doesn't impact the lots that are sold. We set up a pad that we put all the construction, not trailers, but the containers on. And if those impact lots, of those lots are reserved, then typically what we've done is we've picked, like in phase 3, we originally had up in 3A and B in our mind, still phase 3. But sales will pick a area, and then there'll be an equal amount of, like if you look at phase 3, there's lots on the water and lots off the water. They'll pick a spot, so there's enough of each type lot, sell those lots, and then move to the next area and to the next year. And if we have a long period, then as part of our SWIP program, we would oversee those areas that aren't going to be sold right away to stop erosion there. And then, but we try to do it in pieces But the problem is that sometimes like the initial phase sold so fast, we couldn't get out of our own way sometimes. We sold 36 homes or something that first year. And that's the whole site in this site. You know, if we sold 24 in the first year, we sold everything but 12 lots. And that's assuming we only do 2 a month. I think we sold 58 homes in 24 months. So on a pace of 24 months, we'd expected to sell 48, we sold 58. So we're selling better, have been selling better than over a year, better than 2 a month. So this 36 lots could easily be sold out and sold out in a year and built, you know, over 18 months of construction.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kevin.
Brian,
Yeah.
so I have a question about the issue on fill on the environmental corridor. So if what is the purpose of placing the fill in the environmental corridor to start with? Is it just being graded there to create flat surfaces on the home sites, or is it being graded there to aid in the construction of the rain garden?
Both, I would say. So if you've seen the site, it obviously slopes down to the lake. And so you have to balance the site. So we have to balance that site. Along the lake, we have a very high water table. So when I answer your question, it's both. It's to get a flat site and also create an area where we can put the rain garden to retain the water before it does get released to the lake.
And I understood you guys to say, and this is the important thing I think to understand about the environmental corridor. The environmental corridor is there, but basically we were always planning to build a water control feature across the environmental corridor. So it wasn't like it was pristine and it was going to be disturbed. It is actually, we should call it, we're going to reclaim the environmental corridor, right?
That's the way we view it. We, before we even came to the city, we went to Sewer Pack to confirm what we were looking at doing would be permittable by them.
Right.
They looked at it, they said, yes, it would be. So yeah, I look at this more as a reclaiming of a environmental corridor. Right now, if you looked at the site and let's say it wasn't by the lake, it would have 0 environmental corridor attributes. So,
right.
So we will, be bringing those attributes back to that area.
And then I have one last question, as long as you're up there. While Jackie said, the extension of the GDP to 10 years and 5 years is something that we may be comfortable with. I've been on the commission long enough to know we've been requested to increase the GDP from 5 years to 10 years on other properties, and we've decided not to. And oftentimes have had applicants who haven't gotten their plans done within 5 years and had to come back to us. And so I would really like to understand what is the developer's basis. Particularly, we just heard a very rosy sales outlook for filling this area on why we should increase the length of the GDP from 5 to 10 years.
Our plan is obviously to start as soon as possible. And I know I don't look that old, but I got the privilege to live through 2008 through 2015 where I couldn't sell anything. And so, I guess as the scars of my past, I'd like to have that elbow room. So if need be, I'm not coming back in 5 years asking for an additional extension. So again, we're planning on starting. I appreciate the question. In today's world, you'd think you're going to be done and out of here in 5 years. And you are probably right. And knock on wood, I hope you are. But I guess it's been a practice since we've been developing, especially since after 2008, to ask for that additional time just in case something happens that's way out of our control.
Also the golf course, relating it to the golf course changes too.
Yeah, we've got the golf course involved in this also. We also have the townhomes in this. So this is not just the single family.
Correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Matt?
Just to follow up on that, I was also wondering why we would be looking at a 10-year variance instead of the traditional 5-year. It seems trivial to me to come back when there's an issue and ask for an extension within that 5-year period of time. It doesn't have to touch this commission, it goes straight to the council, and the council reviews it. And what that gives us from a city standpoint, the ability to see how a project is going, how it's moving forward, or not moving forward. Traditionally, we've been stuck behind developers that have not moved forward for a very long time. Now, I agree that you guys are doing a fantastic job of doing what you say you're going to do, but that hasn't always been the case. So it's beneficial, just to be clear. I don't see a need to extend it to 10 years, because in today's day and age, we're moving quickly.
We are, but if you were sitting in my shoes in 2005, we'd be having the same conversation. Hey, you build it, they will come. My friend T was buying lots from me back in the day, and you thought you could just throw it in and you're gonna be done, and then by 2008, it stopped on a dime. So, I don't wanna relive the past, but I just wanna give you my rationale behind part of why we're doing that or asking for that.
All right, any other questions? All right, any other citizens who wish to speak at this time while we're still in the public hearing?
Will had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, well,
Yeah, I'm assuming we're still in the public side,
hearing, yeah,
So
we're still in the public hearing.
or whether, how appropriate our questions are at this point. Should I hold off until you close the public hearing, or?
Sure, well, I guess if there's no other citizens that wish to speak at this time, Jackie, just for a little clarity, I know we were always gonna come back to the conditions. Did you wanna do that while we're still in the public hearing, or I can go ahead and close it?
I guess if you're comfortable, you may want to ask the applicant a few questions, but if you're comfortable bringing them up after the public hearing is closed and waiving the rules to allow them to answer questions, you could close it.
I guess, we've had a couple questions, some of which I had the same questions, but I just assume keep it in the public hearing instead of going back and forth. But, so, Will, if you have some questions, I think it's appropriate now while we are still in the public hearing.
Okay, fair enough. There was a conversation earlier, by the developer about the proposal for a sidewalk running on parallel to North Shore, from the road coming out onto North Shore and leading up to Highway 50. My question for that is, who is going to be responsible for the sidewalk? Who's going to pay for the sidewalk? We'll start with that one.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to address it or the petitioner themselves.
So looking at the specific area, it was identified for a sidewalk, seems to be within the golf course area. And so I'm having a challenge finding out exactly how I can do that and work with the developer at the same time keeping it safe. The golf course, some of those holes we were looking to keep intact as much as possible, because that was some of the areas that were gonna be identified for a regulation 9-hole course. And now having a sidewalk in close proximity is going to drastically impact that and overall designs that we're currently working through. Same thing with the path coming out. If you look at page 80 in the total agenda packet, or for this item on the agenda, it would be page 35 for just that portion of the packet. You see the entire resort layout. And having the sidewalk and having connections over in phase 1, 2, and 3 that were put in the Harbor Club really makes sense, because that's people getting down to the marina slips that they're renting. That's people getting to the marina clubhouse. That's people getting to the boat launch. That's people, that area, which was phase 1 and 2 of the Harbor Club, is up against a parking lot. Seems to make more reasonable access for emergency. This area on the far west side of the property, in the golf course, some of these things is really going to impact the design, and I'd like to try to address some of those things and maybe the next step of how we can do that and not have them constrictions or conditions.
So the reality of it is the sidewalk issue is probably just rhetoric at this point. There's no real plan to do this.
That was another way of phrasing it, but I find it very difficult to have that sidewalk part of a golf course or such in close proximity to it.
Moving on to my next question, there's been a fair amount said about stormwater management, yet there is no plan that I see on any of the documents that specifically addresses what and where something might be done. Is any of the approvals that are being requested at this point in any way going to affect getting an appropriate stormwater management program installed for this development?
Hi, the answer to that is we've worked with our civil engineer, Pinnacle Design. We originally were going to look to do pre-crest release. We thought that was more appropriate. The staff would like us to do a traditional detention pond. Our engineers have looked at that and tell me there is not going to be any difficulty building the typical detention facility into the PIP.
Well, that's nice, but it doesn't show us what your proposals are with regard to stormwater management here.
Well, next step. Yeah, our next step will be to do that, but our initial step was to do pre-crest release. But the Pinnacle feels that through that area, the same area, we can provide detention and pre-treatment and release in the same area. So they were planning on providing that alternative proposal the way the staff wants it through our PIP process, and they're prepared to provide the PIP. Our initial question was, does it affect the GDP at all? And their answer was no, it won't affect it. We'll be able to provide the required release through the PIP process.
Okay, well, question, I guess, then for Jackie, none of the proposals that are being requested this evening will in any way affect the city to look at this issue further and make sure that we have an appropriate stormwater management program. Kind of a convoluted statement.
Yeah, could you, so you're asking whether we're confident they'll be able to handle the stormwater with the plan that they have now?
No, Will wants to make sure that the GDP doesn't supersede the development of a adequate stormwater plan to be presented to the board, I mean, to the commission at some point.
So they're given GDP approval. They can't put a shovel in the ground and build anything until they have PIP approval. And that requires a stormwater plan to be approved by the city. So if they aren't able to make it work for some reason, even it seems like they think they can, but if they feel their GDP as proposed won't allow them to have an adequate stormwater management plan, they would have to come back and amend that GDP. But it doesn't sound like that's what they're anticipating.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that to make sure. Um, d- uh, a point was brought up, a valid point was brought up, about a fire inspection on, annual, semi-annual basis for, these properties is, I forget what it was, like item number 13 or something.
13.
Yeah, how does that affect the rental properties? And should there be some type of language that the city can and will inspect the rental properties?
I think the city is allowed to inspect those rental properties, so it may be best to just clarify that number 13 on the list of conditions that wouldn't apply to single family, but would apply to short-term rentals.
So the proposal would be to revisit 13 and reword it in some way.
Yes.
I think there needs to be some more clarity. I don't know if the petitioner has, we're talking about condition number 13. If we're trying to clear that up, because, yeah, I had some issues with just, if I were a owner of one of those homes, I don't know that I'd want the fire department coming twice a year to check on my personal.
And that was, yeah, that was not the intention by, yeah.
So I think just providing a little more clarity, but I can appreciate where Will's going. That's similar to some other inspections on just rental stuff in the city that I don't know what your thoughts are. And this is more of a question to the,
Okay.
for the petition. Sorry, Jay.
As I mentioned in previous meetings, right now out of maybe close to 50 closings, there's currently 2 that are in the rental program. Those are managed by Lake Lawn Resort. That's the only way that somebody could be in for short-term rentals less than 6 months. We have those listed on our licenses for inspections with the state. And we have no problem with adding that for inspection to offset this line item number 13, that only those in the rental program would receive those types of inspections.
Appreciate that, Dave. If you'll work with staff to put that into some type of a language.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
If I remember, sorry.
My final comment is to that the 5-year, 10-year. I concur with the other commissioners that I would prefer the 5-year.
As far as the fire inspection, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was included in the first phases as well. And the rationale at the time was because we didn't know how well they were gonna sell. And we also didn't know if someone was going to sell it back to the association, what would be done at that particular time. So this was just a catch-all to make sure that the ability for the city to come in wasn't impacted by someone deciding that they were just gonna turn the whole thing into not personal property. That's the reason, but I could be wrong.
That, I'm not sure what the reason was at the time, I don't know.
So this is just a holdover from the previous development process.
I do remember there was a previous meeting where we asked some clarification with that. I don't know if that was when we were redoing the approval for phase 3 on the far east side. But this whole time, that didn't really make sense to us. Again, totally fine with changing this to just the short-term rentals or commercial properties like we have for the Marina Clubhouse that we feel is proper inspection purposes.
I think that item was more of a copy and paste from commercial things in the past. And the houses that would be rented would be through Lake Lawn, and that would fall under our landlord licensing program. So in my opinion, we can probably just remove that and we would be fine. But I think it was more of a copy and paste from previous conditional uses.
Thank you, Chief, for the clarification on that. Kevin, did you have your hand up? Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah, I do. And I just want to clarify something related to the sidewalk and pathway conversation, because I appreciate I appreciate the concerns about the sidewalk, that would potentially run, alongside North Shore and question its, um, and think there should be more thought about it before we go down that road. But I was a bit concerned because I think I heard Dave Sakaris say he had problems with the path coming off of the cul-de-sac, um, uh, into at the east end of the complex. And as I understood that, in Jackie's presentation to begin with, the requirement for that path was equally to provide access in an emergency situation into that cul-de-sac network from another area. And I just want to make sure that we're clear that while the sidewalk could be discussed, it would seem wise to me to ensure the second emergency access point to these homes through the other lake lawn path or roadway network. And while protecting portions of the golf course might be one goal, providing safe emergency access to 37 homes would probably trump it in my thinking. And so I think the PIP must show what the alternate access point would be coming out of that end of the cul-de-sac.
I think everybody's brought up just about everything that I had a question on, but I too, I'll start with the secondary access issue, just for clarity for me. I think it makes sense to have a secondary access. What I've wondered is for staff and for the petitioner too, is does it make sense to have that be a little bit more of a natural type thing or something that drains water more easily? Because one of the things, and so I guess my question specifically is like some sort of a like more gravel type setting would, I mean, you don't envision asphalt, or do you? Because one of the things that I referenced last week is that some of these developments have had asphalt going everywhere. And I didn't necessarily like that because of the increased water runoff and issues that might arise from that. So I think there's some talk about widening, making it more wide to allow for those, which I think is very much appropriate, but I would rather see something that's approved that would meet the you know, more of a like a gravel type base, if that, but I just wanted to, I don't.
Yeah, I could share a couple.
Kevin raised that and that was.
But Ryan, you also need to consider that this pathway, whatever you want to call it, is going to have to handle heavy vehicles.
Right.
So, and it's going to have to do that in all kinds of weather.
Right.
So,
I'll let
yeah, just
Jackie-
a couple of thoughts, you know, I think staff would be open to a gravel path. I think there's a few different things we're trying to accomplish here. One would be just pedestrian access from the neighborhood to the rest of the resort, so just a place to, they can go for a walk. But then also emergency access for vehicles, so as, you know, if there's an emergency, a car can get in and out. So those could be the same path, or they could be two different paths potentially. We'd have to spend some time looking at the design and talk to the engineers. But it seems to me that we can probably find a solution that doesn't result in excess paving, but still meets our goals.
I just want a little clarity on that. I'm with Kevin also on the sidewalks. I mean, anyone that's been out on the golf course with me, I wish I had more time to spend on the golf course. I don't have time, but when I have been out there, it never seems to fail. Golf off that a few times and I slice it, over the fence into the road. The last thing I would want to do is put someone at risk, walking down the sidewalk, but I think there needs to, I guess, I don't know that, I mean, we're gonna outline a lot of this stuff more in the PIP, the next step, but and I thought I heard, but again, the petitioner can clarify this. Doing a sidewalk on the development part of it and connecting it makes more sense potentially. I did reference, the road that leads to nowhere. I would hate to have a sidewalk that leads to nowhere. I live in a residential neighborhood where I'm the only one, or one of two, I guess, that has a sidewalk. Frankly, there could be an argument, maybe it's an older neighborhood, so that's why it hasn't. If it was a new development, they would have put the sidewalk in from one end of the block to the next, but I think, again, you can just confirm this for me that we can maybe, I'm with Kevin, I think there's some more talk that needs to be done about the sidewalk. Again, maybe it's a portion of it, but I guess one of the things too is as development comes along, would it make more sense to have potential development in the future west of North Shore, have a sidewalk there where at least it's a little further. I think they'd still be in trouble if I was out golfing there, but it would make a little more sense. I think, I don't know how we address that, but I'm with Kevin. I think something needs to be more clear on that issue and that condition. So I'd be interested in hearing what Jackie, you think, or does that make sense, or?
Well, no one wants to build a sidewalk to nowhere, and I think any sidewalk to nowhere that does exist was, the result of a plan that didn't get executed, things changed, maybe something didn't develop as planned. And I certainly understand, as long as the golf course is there, there may be concerns about sidewalk immediately next to the golf course, although folks are hitting balls into the street. It sounds like we've already got a bit of a safety hazard there. One thing is, we talked about the last public hearing, is that the resort's always changing and evolving, and maybe the golf course footprint will change again, or they'll go a different direction with the land there. And so at the very least, it seems to me that at least reserving the corridor for a future for a future sidewalk in that location would make a lot of sense. Especially, 37 homes here. It would be great if they had an opportunity to walk up to Highway 50, but then the applicant has mentioned 60 townhomes potentially just north of this, and having no place for those folks to walk or no safe route for them to get to the shopping and restaurants on Highway 50 is a bit of a concern for me. So I'm definitely like the idea of, as development occurs, providing that sidewalk and leaving that opportunity open for connecting it to 50 through the golf course. But if this, if the city doesn't intend to build that sidewalk all the way to 50, it doesn't make sense to build that sidewalk segment now if there's no plan to complete the route to 50. So that's something to consider. And the last thing I'll say is, at this time, the crosswalk on of Highway 50 is on the east side. And so a sidewalk on the east side of North Shore Drive would align with that crosswalk. That's not to say that there's not a possibility to add more crosswalks, but I do believe the west side of that intersection is pretty chaotic. And so the best place for that sidewalk would be on the east side of North Shore Drive.
Thank you for clarifying. And the other one, Kevin also brought up is the fill. I think one of the things that, I concur that there is an advantage to actually bringing in fill and doing it the right way. I think we've seen that in phase 1 through 3, where, and it's been tested and confirmed. I think that the comments were made. Yes, I had heard from the town officials that maybe they were getting some complaints about water directly going into the lake, which we certainly wouldn't want. And the drones comment was mentioned, where the town people actually sent the drones up. So the town officials that confirmed that even though they were getting some complaints that wasn't the case, and that it was meeting the the conditions that it was meant to meet. And so that's one of the things that with potential development is that we can enhance some of those conditions that when you say an environmental corridor aren't currently there, and we can actually make sure that they are better served with the rain gardens or basins. So I think the only way to accomplish that, in addition to just leveling off some of that for development, is more important to make sure that there's dirt there and it's configured in a way that meets the conditions that we're trying. We ultimately want to have a better environmental corridor and a situation to address it. And I think that enhances it by having that opportunity. The other thing too, it was mentioned, I like the idea of a little wider street to allow for someone visiting plans to live there. That makes sense. And so just wanted to confirm that I don't know that the exact numbers, I think it was posted as 59 by 85, but there seems to be, when you start to figure in, those numbers might change. So I just wanted to confirm that that's something that we can confirm also in the next step, or I mean, it just makes sense that in the PIP, we would confirm whatever that number is that we're trying to address, but you can, I mean, we don't have to confirm that number tonight as part of the GDPR, or were you thinking?
Well, right now, the way it's worded is the width is a minimum, and so perhaps what we would want to do is reduce that to a lower number, establish a lower minimum now, so that gives the applicant a little flexibility in the PIP step to hone in on that precise lot width. So right now, I believe it says 59 feet for a lot width, so if we reduced it to 55.
So if they're gonna widen that road to accommodate parking on one side. Yeah. I would think that'd be typically 8 feet. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, when we do a typical parking space and parking lot in the city would be 9 feet by 18 feet. And so I would think 8 or 9 feet would be closer. I think I heard somebody floating around 3 or 6 feet. It seemed a little narrow.
6 feet's a little there.
So I would advocate for closer to 8 or 9 feet.
And would 8 feet impact their pad enough so they couldn't put the houses on it?
Yeah, we'll ask them.
And I have one more question.
Sure.
When you talk about no raising of the grade, building permitted within the 75-foot shoreline setback, we're not talking about stopping them from putting fill in there that they're gonna use later in their property. They're gonna keep all that black dirt and stuff you scrape off to level that spot. It's gonna stay on site and none of it will go into the corridor. Is that correct?
I'm gonna have the applicant answer that, but that condition is referring to permanent grading, not temporary grading during construction. I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at.
Okay, now we'll make one more comment, not necessarily to you, but I'll make a comment. The sidewalk. I believe in sidewalks, I'm gonna tell you right now. His house doesn't have in other parts of the street, they should have that.
Yep, great.
It's no more safer for them to walk on the street up to 50 than to put a sidewalk in. So putting a sidewalk in isn't gonna increase or decrease the safety of those pedestrians if they want to walk from the current development up to Highway 50. In fact, it might even encourage more safety because they're at least on the sidewalk, and to get hit with a golf ball, that means that golf ball would have to go up in the air over that fence and then right on the sidewalk. They could be walking into the street, same thing could happen. And I think that people are gonna walk from there up to Highway 50 on a nice day, and I think it's nice to have a sidewalk to walk on. That's just a comment.
Maybe answer your question, and I honestly forgot the first one was the lot size. Street size. When you get my age, you forget these things. When you get to my age, you'll know what I'm talking about.
I'm under there.
The width is 55, the width won't change. I think Jackie had 59, I think on our plan it's 56, basically. The width won't change, it's the depth.
Right.
So what is shown as 94 will go to maybe
90.
Pardon?
90.
Yeah, it could be 90. I would say make it a smaller number. That way, if the engineers do decide it should be more space, we haven't froze ourselves out of, arbitrarily picking a number, but say the roads are 22 feet, and if somebody parks there that takes up 8 feet, you know, maybe you're gonna add 5, 6 feet to the width of the street, whatever that number winds up being. So if it's 6 feet, it's gonna be 3 feet per side essentially, which would reduce that 94 to 91. But there's no point if we're all agreed we want to make the engineers pick some road width. I wouldn't want to say 91, then it winds up being, well, it should have been 90 or 85. So I'm saying if we say the minimum depth should be 85, I'm fine with that, you know, because that'll give us more
That
than,
was my question,
Yeah.
whether or not the pad was big enough, if you made your lot size go to 90 by 55.
yeah, if you push it back additional depth, this doesn't hurt us. The whole goal is to have a wide enough road, 30-foot driveway, and then a lot. So if you push it smaller, well, it doesn't hurt us, because if you do say, hey, it's gotta be at least 85 feet deep, and we come back at 92, or at least 85. Then the pad question,
And the other question was about the dirt.
the pads, the building, what we're proposing was to build the pads up, because as you know, the ground tapers off to the lake. When we build the pad up, we're gonna be placing fill, and then the quarter, you have to angle it down to the shore. That quarter would stay, that would be a permanent improvement, just like the embankment or the slope that's in phase 3 up by the new marina, the new boat launch area. It'll stay the same, it'll be naturally planted, all that. But the dirt stockpiles we were talking about would not be placed, temporary stockpiles wouldn't be placed in the quarter, they'd be placed outside the quarter, because we have to, part of our stormwater pollution prevention plan is to create an environment where if we have a heavy rain, that doesn't run into storm sewers and everything. If we put that right up against the water, we're just asking for trouble.
Therefore my question.
Yeah, I'm getting enough trouble, I don't need to ask for trouble.
Thank you.
I think for myself personally, I think I've addressed most, if not all of the major points that we've been talking about, with the exception of just this individually. I don't know how collectively the committee feels about it, but I think it was asking for the variance, was it lot 407? I just wanted a little, for me personally, if it were asking for a variance, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes weren't in compliance, that'd be a different story. But the fact that the one lot, and I thought it was mentioned 407 lot, but I could be wrong.
Is it one or was it two? It was one. I thought it was two.
That was just one I heard. One was, yeah, just one. That I personally, I'm okay with an exception to the fact that it's just one lot. Again, you can clarify. I thought I heard one lot without compliance, not more than one lot, but then taking notes, that was the other one, right? It's still out there that maybe needed a little bit of clarity, or at least some feedback.
So I don't know if we can pull up that exhibit. Our engineer went with down and then went with a right angle, and if you use the right angle, then we're not even, we're outside the 100 feet. Staff said, look, you know, roads don't have right angles like that, so you have to average it out. Okay, so if you average it out, it's that one lot on that corner, which I believe we can see when we. Actually, if you go back, I can tell you which one it was. Well, go forward. I'm sorry. Maybe do we have an extra exhibit on there? There it is. So it's this lot right here. So if you look at it, what you know, we're saying, here's the center line, and then it jogs back, and so we went with this right angle, right? And then, you know, staff is like, hey, you gotta average it out a little bit. So as you average it out, this line starts coming over like this. So it's this line over here. And man, for the life of me, I can't.
407.
Is it 407?
Yeah, I thought it was 4.
Yeah, it's 407. So that's the one we're asking for a leniency on the setback. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe clarify what. Right. Any other questions? Can we take it down now, because I can't see. Kevin or Will or Jackie have any questions? Yeah, that's good. Any other questions? For those that are joining us virtually? Any other questions up here? No. If not, there's no other comments, I would go ahead and officially close the public hearing. And move. Anyone care to make some sort of a motion?
Right.
Kevin, you got your hand up?
I thought Jackie was gonna lead a process of talking about the exceptions.
Oh, yeah, sure, I mean, just for more clarity, I'm fine with that.
I think perhaps when someone is ready to make a motion, they could just clarify which conditions of approval they want to include. And so if we walk through them
Yeah,
now, that'll help. Whoever makes the motion will guide them in that. All right, so this is page 66 of the meeting packet, in the staff report, list of conditions identified by city staff. Number one, the approval of this GDP affects only lot one of the PID, doesn't disrupt any previous approvals. Number two pertains to the fill in the environmental corridor. So this one states no raising of the grade shall be permitted. It sounds like from the discussion that some individuals perhaps wanted to remove that condition. Number three is the requirement to have a secondary vehicular access point at the east end of the development for emergency purposes. Number four is requiring driveways to be a minimum of 30 feet deep to provide for vehicle parking in the driveway. Number six is the condition to, number five is the condition to require widening those internal streets to allow for parking on one side of the street. I suggested an additional 8 or 9 feet of width for that purpose. Number six, sidewalks or a shared use path provided along North Shore Drive. This could be something that if you do want to pursue, you could require the space be reserved for it rather than the immediate implementation or construction of that path. Number seven is the approval for a period of 10 years, beginning from the date of council approval. 8 through 10 are pertaining to easements being granted to the city. These are boilerplate conditions that we've included for other Harbor Club developments. Number 11, just confirming that what we're approving this evening is what we're approving and cannot be varied. Number 12, just confirming that any changes might require a modification to either this GDP or a future PIP. Number 13, I believe the consensus was to direct staff to modify this, that the inspections do not apply to single-family residences, only to rentals. The remainder of these conditions are boilerplate pertaining that we include for all of our planned infill development, but I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those. Thank you.
Any questions for Jackie or further clarification on the conditions? Yes, Kevin.
I have a question on 13. I thought, if the rental, excuse me, if the rental, if the rental is in the program, it's on the state inspection element and this on this state inspection requirement, and T said 13 could be deleted.
I agree.
Is that correct? I'm listening.
Yes.
That is correct, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Any other questions on the conditions that we talked about? Anyone, if there's no questions, anyone care to make a motion?
Mayor,
Yes, Kevin.
I'd move to recommend common council approval of the planned infill development amendment to the official zoning map for revised step 3 general development plan at 2400 East Geneva Street, located in Manufacturing Light ML zoning district to allow for residential development in the area of the Lake Lawn Resort, including the findings as listed under the required findings by the Plan Commission section of the report, the list of conditions in the report, accepting item 2, 7, and 13, and any additional conditions of approval recommended by staff or the Plan Commission.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a question, does that include the roadway being widened by 9 feet? To accommodate parking on one side, is that included in that?
The condition to widen it was included in that. It doesn't have, the width would be determined in the PIP.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 8, zoning administrator's report.
Well, so as you can see from my report, most of what we've been working on is what we were talking about tonight. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The only thing I'd like to add is that, because I know a lot of people have been asking about the Amon's Liquor Store, they are hoping to be open for St. Patrick's Day. If not before then.
Any questions for Kim? The endless report. There's no further business before us. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Take that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment? Signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Sometimes.